no other hearts and minds of people who believe that by bringing the Armageddon and genocide is somehow a will of God. So if you want to talk about Easter, well, let's put a couple of bunnies out of the garden before we stuff our faces with chocolate and wish everyone happy Easter ever after. Let's open our eyes and see where the Christianity is, where that cross is. Does it unite us by reconciling the horizontal plane of existence and the vertical domain of spirit, or is it here dividing us at the fundamental level? Well, it happens to be Easter today, right? Easter. Maybe just like a little bit of sharing first to see where it leads us. Like for many years, we held our spring immersions exactly during Easter time in California. Kind of was just without us trying, it was timed with that. And this is when one particular theme was born called Tantric Christ. It was actually delivered in California in the spring of 2015. To coincide with Easter. It's a week-long immersion we held there in Mill Valley, and we spoke about what it means, Christ's teachings today. So the theme of Tantric Christ was something much longer in the making, of course, where the esoteric dimension of the teachings were brought forth. There was this attempt, not a scholarly attempt, and don't get me wrong. It was an attempt to juxtapose tantric philosophy in esoteric dimension of spiritual teaching, of what potentially the Christ story could represent. And then the kind of propensity to speak to this waned off. So therefore, you don't see me particularly being enthusiastic about speaking or speaking about this. The latest I've touched up on that theme when, in fact, Alex encouraged me to say something, to the effect of the importance of Christ's teaching. We have published it on our YouTube channel. It's a conversation, exchanges took place in Mexico last year, sometimes in November. It's not that somehow Christianity as a theme or Christianity as a religion or the teachings of Christ or what it means is irrelevant. It's as much relevant as it was, maybe even more so, particularly with the rise of any forms of orthodoxy and something which is very, very troubling, because as the world gets more globalized, there is a definitive pull towards maintaining the position on the right to interpret what is the final word of God, so to speak. So this orthodoxy also is accompanied by all forms of extremism. And in that respect, Christianity has a fair share as a religion. Of course, not as a religion per se. And this is where it's very important to disentangle these psychic knots, because religion cannot be blamed for how it is interpreted. The religious message of the prophets, the religious message of the sages, whoever came there, let's say, who was there, considered to be as the originator, cannot be held accountable for how it is interpreted in any given age and time. But the indications that there is the rise of extremism under the blanket of religious righteousness is a fact. Just look what is happening today in India, with the very strong pull towards that. In America, in the United States, in North America, this Orthodoxy, is known as Christian evangelists, where the influence is so powerful that it influences the international policies of the United States across the world, particularly in the Middle East, particularly with regard to Israel, because the words of the Bible are taken literally and interpreted literally. I would recommend any of you to watch a recently released documentary called Praying for Armageddon. It's a documentary which deals with that, which looks into this phenomena. To me, it was quite a shocking revelation, even though I thought and considered myself to be quite acquainted with the way of how things are in the United States, because we've traveled there for prolonged periods of time, and I used to go to the States twice a year for as long as 2.5 months at a time to teach. And of course, I've witnessed this very strong presence of that, let's say, how Christianity is taken at the face value and how it is practiced and preached. And of course, historically, I know that Christianity, like all other religions, was used as the instruments of colonialism and later imperialism. Every empire used the teachings of Christ for their political and economical gains. If we don't understand this, then we can't really be true Christians. If we don't understand that the spiritual teachings served to go and legitimize the usurping freedom and taking over other parts of the world, whole countries, whole cultures, and it was done by the missionaries and Jesuits. Just look into that, the history of the Jesuits. The very first empire that was born to the sea travels was that of Portuguese empire. And then, with the rise of the Armada of the Spanish fleet, they have divided the world neatly between themselves. Completely like that. One half of the world and another half of the world. This is Spanish, this is Portuguese. And even in advance, anything that is discovered, because this was the time of great discoveries, 15th and 16th century has been characterized by great sea voyages. We all know that, right? We all know that. The great Magellan, who did the world around, the Amerigo Vespucci, Vasco da Gama, Christopher Columbus, and so it goes. All the so-called niches and crevices of the world were discovered. Unknown continents, ways how to travel. supposedly to trade. But the history would have it that it was a division of the world, at least how it was decided between then Portuguese and Spanish empires. Anything that would be discovered in any part of the world was already granted, would belong to either of the empires. There's a very interesting film now, an adaptation of a book called Shogun that is now being viewed by Disney. And I'm greatly enjoying it at home because I'm a fan of Japanese culture, and it neatly coincides precisely with that time that takes place in 15th, 16th century when this Englishman travels with the Dutch fleet and ends up in Japan by sheer accident, in a way, of travels, as they're trying to avoid Spanish Armada in trying to find a way to trade so that not to run the risk of being pirated by those powers that were considered to be superior at the time. So this man, the Englishman, is historical characters based on the facts, based on the events, landed in Japan at the time when Jesuits did their great work and managed to convert first levels of elite society in Japan into Catholicism. 100 years after, the Catholicism will be expelled from Japan because the Japanese warlords, the shogunates, realized that this was the plan to turn Japan into a vassal of Portuguese Empire by converting first the nobility and take the power from the Emperor of Japan and make it completely and utterly the colonial part or part of the colonial system. What am I talking about? Again, oh, this teacher, he's constantly talking about something else but spiritual stuff. Give us the direct path, man. Stop talking and beating about the bush. You know, I forgot the history. I'm no longer in school. I'm here to get quickly, what's the shortest path to enlightenment? This is the shortest path to enlightenment. Just as the shortest route to India was looked for. So as to come and rob the freaking country. Robbed. Country was robbed. India was the poorest country in the world at the time when it gained its independence in 1950. Who don't know that? Oh, come on, we're not landed from the moon. India was the poorest country in the world in 1950, at the time when the Brits finally returned India to itself. Why do you think anyone went to India in the first place? Why? Because it was the richest country in the world. The richest country in the world. The backbone, the spine of India had to be broken so as to never recover. Because if you read the account of Lord Mountbatten, or Lord Mountbatten, you will immediately understand what was playing itself out. He was sent there to travel India across the width and length and to report back, what is this country like? What are our chances? And he said in his report, and this report is available, at least used to be available some 15 years ago, circulating across the Facebook. I'm no longer on Facebook, so I don't know if it's still circulating. A document, a letter to His Majesty, or Her Majesty probably, that gives an account of what life in India was like. And the conclusion was, this country cannot be conquered because this country is too powerful in its spirit, and spirit cannot be conquered. All the reasons were given first. It's a conclusive remarks. It cannot be conquered unless we cut Indian people from the very source of their power, from the very source of their strength, from their spirit. So this is what we're talking about, how every dissemination of religious teachings served in order to enhance wealth, power, domination, and so forth. So how can one teach in the name of Christ today, when Christ's teaching was used to go and usurp other countries, take their independence, ravage and take in the name of free trade? I'm not here to lecture you Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels now. I'm not here to deliver you the capital and why the, capitalist values are bankrupt from get-going. It is for you to figure out for yourself whether it is answering to the evolution of spirit and consciousness on the planet. The system that is created, and now basically we are living in the final phases of capitalism, final phases, Armageddon. So watch that documentary. The final phase is when people are praying in the United States today, not metaphorically. They actually go and collectively praying for the end of the world, where Israel is the place where the Messiah is supposed to come as his second coming. So Israel would have to be supported, even if it will commit endless genocides against any people, let alone Palestinians. The Palestinians will be wiped out of the surface of the planet, and it doesn't matter. It will still be supported because the lobby is too strong. But where the strength of that lobby? It rests in the hearts of people, hearts and minds of people who believe that Bible has to be taken literally. And whenever some spiritual teachings are taken literally, then you can create a holy war at your disposal. Of course, we hear about jihadists all the time. We manufacture jihadists. We manufacture them like the Chinese factory manufactures cheap little toys over the past 40 years for children, so that can plastic float in the ocean of the Pacific, where Magellan crossed and called it Pacific. It just happened to be quiet. No, ships got lost in the Pacific for hundreds of years afterwards. It's not as quiet as it happened to be on the days that he crossed it. What's so Pacific about the Pacific? It's the biggest ocean. Have you traveled the sea? You know, sea is a sea. Pacific. Give me a break. It's not Pacific at all. No other hearts and minds of people who believe that by bringing the Armageddon and genocide is somehow a will of God. So if you want to talk about Easter, well, let's put a couple of bunnies out of the garden before we stuff our faces with chocolate and wish everyone happy Easter ever after. Let's open our eyes and see where the Christianity is, where that cross is. Does it unite us by reconciling the horizontal plane of existence and the vertical domain of spirit, or is it here dividing us at the fundamental level? So the rise of the fundamentalism now is in the name of God in every freaking effing country in the world. So, sweet little bunnies and plenty of eggs and plenty of this and plenty of that. manufacturing consent, constantly. So proposition here is that individual freedom doesn't exist from the freedom from being manufactured in a factory of effing up our brains and hearts, raging and raving through and corrupting what is innocent, because that's what it is. The human heart is innocent. It's an indwelling place of divinity. So therefore I said the other day, nothing glorious about killing children en masse. Nothing glorious about it. These are not soldiers. Civilians called from their jobs to do the job, doing the job. Because some people are considered to be God-chosen, is a F-up system, severely. So Easter is a great opportunity to look into this squarely. As I said, we then can go and stuff our faces with chocolate. We will. We'll take presents home. Don't worry. The collective consensus of going with every freaking celebration as it happens is there and very strong. But is there one place left in the heart so that we can put one foot, and even if it's not easy to balance on that one foot, can we find that place in our heart? That's the question. Can we? Apparently, the end of the world, and it is in Jerusalem that's where the Messiah will come. So we have to have this end of the world. Literally, not metaphorically. Not some metaphorical end of the world. And then Messiah will come, and the blood will flow to the bridle of the horse as he runs that horse across the battlefield. So the bloodthirsty are calling for that Armageddon. And they're not just bikers tattooed to the teeth, uneducated, working class. No, these are congressmen and congresswomen who smell of the most expensive French perfume. Their nails are polished, they look good, they speak well, and they all have families, and they all raise children, and they're all human beings. And they will never, never support the ceasefire. Doesn't matter how many people, because not enough blood. Did you hear? The Bible says in that description of the Armageddon, until the blood runs to the bridle of the horse. It's taken literally, probably. The bridle of the horse. So what Christ teaching? So religious fundamentalism is on the rise. India is a country which used to welcome every temple, every other foreign guest who didn't just come to India for a visit, but came with a purpose, with an agenda. 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 I didn't come here just because I'm amazed how amazing you live. Some people did. Hats off to them. These are the lovers of truth. These are the true travelers. Every true traveler goes ethnic. Every agenda-ridden guy comes in with their own ways. Convert. Convert. Take missionary position. I'm undoing my trousers. Because I'm appointed. It's nothing private about it. Agendas. So the God is a flag, whereas I'm bringing my nasty, stinky, poor, petty agendas. And I use God as that excuse. Justification as well. I justify that. So India that used to be opened and into the family of 1 million of gods, yet another god is not going to tip the balance, is now closing its doors firmly. Hindu or bust, Orthodox Hindu. This is country of Hinduism. That's it. That's what the Modi government is right now, turning into a fundamentalist government. And the jihadists were manufactured, as I mentioned earlier, in a factory. Factory is called CIA. Every freaking movement that's supposed to then become a hydra that we can then freely go and fight was masterminded, financed, supported, erected by these institutions. Al-Qaeda, geez, I mean, all created. Dragons need to exist and they need to blow fire, because otherwise St. George has no job to do. Imagine there's no dragons around flying. The St. George is good for nothing. That great hero guy on a white horse, right, and like slayer of dragons, he lost his purpose suddenly. You can't convert St. George into a peaceful tea master, can you? No, there's no glory in the tea. But letting the blood to dragon, there's a glory. Because he spits fire. So we'll create dragons when there are no flying around. So dragons were perpetually created. So please tell me about the teachings of Christ. I'm all ears. I want to hear it. You tell me. I'll shut up. I'll shut the F up. You tell me about the teachings of Christ on this Easter. Please, enlighten me. I want to hear. So, happy Easter. Let that blood flow to the bridle then, right? The God's chosen people already chosen. What the heck do I know here? I wasn't chosen. I don't have DNA purity. Everywhere I look down to my 7 generations, constantly mixes of bloods. This, that blood. No purity there. No ethnic purity. Sorry. I have no chance. Should have born into a more privileged bloodline. So much for heaven within. So, my only suggestion to simplify this is that individual awakening is only a stepping stone, a phase, a necessary phase in psychological maturity, which ultimately should lead to the greater awareness, and this greater awareness therefore must encompass greater political awareness. Political, not how it is spoken of, but in terms of the greater awareness of the collective state of affairs, of who we are as human beings, and how do we navigate here the destiny of this planet. Because there's no God. God is a concept. There's no such thing as God. La illa illallah. There's no God but God. That is maybe has more meaning to it. There's no such thing as God per se. Everything is idea. Everything is idea. Everything is a concept, and what we made of it, what we make of it. This is where it becomes quantum. This is where it becomes really, really, really balancing act. Balancing act. Each time I lean here, each time I lean there, the balance is lost. So mystics were always spoiling the whole neat arrangement. So they were either asked to renounce their proclamations, announcements, and insights, or bust. They would be burned on stakes. You see? And today mystics don't have nerve, or so it seems. They become politically correct. They call themselves mystic. I'm mystic. I'm Mr. Mystic. My ass. If you're mystic, then you cannot really have that kind of political correctness. It doesn't go together. Sorry, it doesn't go together. If you hold biases tightly somehow or whatever, then what's so mystical about it? I may be wrong, but the teachings of Christ is a extraordinary complex phenomena. As any religion is an extraordinary complex phenomena. Because every spiritual teaching eventually undergoes its cohabitation with the political interests of the, at the time, ruling classes. And this is a deadly combination. And it doesn't matter if people deny and say, we are this state, we are that state. That cohabitation continues. Why would Constantine declare Christianity a state religion, if not for the dying of the empire? It's the best, the most Machiavellic move. It's the grandest of the moves, the grandest of them all. But this is where we're entering now the domain of scholarship. The books were written about it. Dissertations written, PhDs, doctorates. If you want, you can have a look how it was done. All the councils at Nicaea. How it was all done. A live transmission, heart-to-heart teachings of Christ were used to become institutionalized religion to save the ruling class from the collapse which was imminent, which was rotten within. And then the living communities where the Christ teachings proper thrived were suffocated by centralized system of either taxes or often direct military campaigns. And that's the history of most religions. So, we need to find a way, because nobody will find this way for us. And it's a difficult time we're going through right now. Very, very difficult, truly. Not tomorrow, right now. It's a making or breaking a time. And one of perhaps the most important thing is to be able to maintain that place where our heart is not taken over by indoctrination, which happens through first converting our minds. Because the war is for the mind always, first and foremost. First, one needs to win the war for the mind. Then one can go into any battlefield and commit any genocide because the war of the mind is won. You see? Then the mob will cast it down. Then the mob will do this, kill, thumbs down like in Rome. Anyway, didn't mean to spoil your Easter mood and didn't mean to spoil it. So, but if I were to speak, I felt it would be disingenuous to speak to something that maybe was somehow would be more esoteric, more cozy, more interesting. Let's go into this, and let's talk about what it means, Easter. Fuck this shit, honestly. I mean it. And I said I'm not going to swear anymore, but this time, fuck this shit. On the record. Is there hope? She's the last who flew from the Pandora box. Because it's not about hope. It's about not letting the heart to be corrupted. If the heart is not corrupted, then there is always a balancing act. So if any one of us here, anyone, any finder, seeker, anyone who wonders, do I matter? Isn't my life just minding my business? I have enough on my plate to deal with. What can I bring here? What can be counted? Well, if words of encouragement to be given, the shift is happening as we speak, as we see it. With every adjustment at your own uniquely experienced level. The tip of the balance towards justice taking place. One heart at the time, right now. The war is for now, one heart at the time. Victory is gained through the heart. One at the time. And it's happening as we speak right now. So if I'm in any position to say anything, if anything of what is being said is of value, if there is anything somehow that flies and stays with you, then this is what I wish to relate today, in this very moment. We can't allow complacency to veil our heart from that what it is here to communicate. An acknowledgement of all that can only take place if we're truly able to rise above our mental preferences because we've settled on some set of agendas, very often being subjected to indoctrination from such an early age that it's inconceivable to know when it began. Then that individual freedom has any value. And if I may add this simply as a reminder, if Christ was a historical figure, if he truly lived, and it doesn't matter, really, because we speak here about that what exists at multiple levels of reality, then above all else he was a rebel. Rebel. He rebelled against the Orthodoxy, against fundamentalism. So taking the Christ teaching as an umbrella of fundamentalism is totally wrong. It's rottenly wrong. Happy Easter again. I'm done.